and it's helped a little bit,
Yeah.
but not to the degree. He attacks them out. He's a great skier. His whole family. Be nice to be there.
Well, time. We're running out of time.
Yes, indeed. He doesn't think so.
No, he doesn't.
Not at all. Who do we have here? Is Robbie on?
Waiting for Josh to unmute himself.
I just gave a fiery speech, which you guys all missed. However, Board of Selectmen are all here. Tony's here. So it is 6:30 on January 8th, 2025, and the Nahant Board of Selectmen meeting is now in session. We will open our meeting with some opening comments, which I will read. Winter parking ban is in effect until March 20th, 2025, from 12 a.m. midnight to 6 a.m. No vehicles on the street during this time, regardless of the snow parking ban. Contact Nahant Police Department if you need a winter parking sticker. Christmas tree pickup. DPW will be picking up Christmas trees during the month of January. Leave tree curbside, remove all decorations, lights, tinsel, tree stands, etc. There will be a Christmas tree bonfire on Friday, January 10th, 2025, with a rain date of Saturday, January 11th at 6 p.m. at Bailey's Hill. Nahant Historical Society 50th anniversary party is Sunday, January 19th, 2025, beginning at 2 p.m. at Nahant Town Hall. That sounds like quite an event. Nahant Town Hall will be closed on Monday, January 20th, in observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day holiday. Here's an important one. Citizens petitions for town meeting. The deadline to add a citizen petition article to the town meeting warrant is January 31st, 2025. For information on how to submit a petition as a resident or a committee member, visit Nahant. Visit the town meeting page at nahant.org. Jean or Rob, you have any other opening comments to add before we move on?
I have nothing.
All set here, Josh.
Right. Oops, got a lot of things open here. Okay, we're gonna have a joint meeting with the planning board. So I move that the Board of Selectmen open the joint meeting with the planning board.
Seconded.
Mr. Chairman, it doesn't appear that the planning board has a quorum. Hi, this is Shannon. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it doesn't appear that we have a quorum quite yet. Could we possibly delay this?
Yeah, that's what we'll do,
Thank you.
Shannon.
Hey, Josh, we actually do. We have on the phone Rob Steinberg, Sheila, Bianchi, and Capano. So we do.
I'll take that back. Hey, Rob.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, Shannon. I'm sorry. I was out of town last night. Apologize for not attending the meeting. I was at a dinner. Go ahead.
No problem. So,
Sheila's here.
Yeah. So, maybe we let the selectmen just vote to open the meeting. I think is the right thing to do. So, roll call vote on opening the meeting.
Gene Canty, aye.
Rob Tibbo, aye.
Never mind. All right. Sorry, Sheila.
No problem. So, as chairman of the planning board, I will move to open the planning board's meeting with you tonight, and it will be by roll call vote. So I have Shannon Bianchi.
I'm here, and again, I apologize for not realizing that we had a quorum. Thank you.
I am looking for Rebecca Flacca. Not present. I'm looking for Casey Carey. I'm looking for Steve Viviano. Sheila Hambleton is here, present. Michelle Capano.
She's here, she's just muted.
Okay, hello, Michelle.
Sorry about that. Here.
Okay, so have I got everybody?
And Rob Steinberg.
Rob Steinberg.
Oh, yes, and Rob Steinberg.
Thank you.
Okay, so the meeting is so opened at 6:34.
Right. Sheila, did you have any opening comments you wanted to make before we get rolling?
This is to discuss the ADUs, correct?
Yep.
Yes, thank you. Yes, we had a nice little presentation last night during our planning board meeting. I have been pushing Shannon to help move and, get this ADU bylaw in place to make sure that we were protected. And we did put the place mark article in place, but, it was not a comprehensive article. Shannon has finally given us a draft zoning bylaw, which we went through and discussed last night. And if it's possible, I'd like to have him summarize what we did last night. Shannon, are you able? I see Rebecca Flacca. Okay, I'm going to count you as present.
Shannon, would you like to summarize your discussions from yesterday?
Yes, I was hoping that Shannon would give a little presentation on it.
Shannon, you're muted if you're trying to speak.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out how to do a screen share here. From
Try it now.
my phone.
Oh,
So
Well,
I may be at a loss. So if someone has that draft bylaw, Tony, maybe if you could bring it up and scroll through it with me, that'd be great. I hate to ask you to do that, but again, I'm
did it
kind of at a
come?
loss. I'm not at my office.
I don't know if I have. Did you send it to me?
maybe I very quickly a few minutes ago wrote up a one-page little ADU summary, and maybe while Tony looks for that, are you able to share? I just emailed it to you like 2 minutes ago, Tony.
Yeah.
Hopefully I got everything factually correct. If not, you could give me the right to share and I can share it from my computer.
And
It's
I
just-
only have it in a paper form.
Well, let me end my video and then I could just go through it. Hold on. Can you still hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, so hello everyone. I did some preliminary I looked at multiple different towns. A lot of towns in Massachusetts already have their AD laws written. Some don't, but a lot do. I looked at the draft regulations, which could be found on mass.gov, which are, in my perspective, subject to change relatively soon. But I was able to go through the draft regulations, and because Nahant doesn't really have a accessory dwelling unit bylaw, I was able to look at certain communities on Cape Cod that kind of mirror ours, and kind of take lessons from them. And I guess in the legal world, it's called mining. So where it's akin to plagiarism, but it's not necessarily that. To kind of like help guide and form a baseline that we could all build off of if we're looking at something like this. So I pulled up, Tony, I'm going to send this to you. Maybe you could share it. Hold on. I pulled up a couple different places in Cape Cod. I looked at also Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, things like that. And I came up with kind of a draft ADU bylaw that we could start building upon. And Tony, I just sent it to you, and it'd be great if you could check and see if you can put that up.
Yeah, it hasn't come in yet.
Okay. One of the planning board's emphasis here is to draft this heavy on enforcement, administration, and procedural requirements, as opposed to other bylaws where we might want to focus on the intent of the law or the more fluffy language. I looked at this as a means to achieve an end, which is so like the purpose and intent section of the planning board's accessory dwelling unit bylaw proposal starts basically with just stating that the purpose of it and intent of this bylaw is to comply with Section 8 of Chapter 150 of the Acts of 2024, also known as the Affordable Homes Act, and that's it. I didn't want to get into political speak or whatnot. And then I jump into a couple definitions that are basically, I pulled them straight out of the acts. And then I went into some administration, enforcement, and procedural requirements. Tony, you check that again?
Yep, it still hasn't come through.
Yeah, and is this
Okay.
the same document you emailed out maybe yesterday or so?
Yeah, it's titled SB Clean Version.
Okay, I think I have that in my email.
Okay. That'd be really helpful
Okay. Here it is.
Okay, great. Let me know when it's up on the screen and I'll just start going through it.
All right, hold on one sec.
Thank you.
Hey,
And just for the public, go ahead.
I was wondering if maybe I could just show sort of the background. I mean, obviously the planning board is well versed in this topic and as a selectman, and I thought maybe just for the people that aren't on one of those committees, maybe I could just show like what's this all about. So
you want to start from the top?
Yeah, just an intro, okay? So
okay, great.
This will be really quick. You can go to the next slide, Tony. So as Shannon started to explain, so in August, Governor Healy signed the Affordable Homes Act, which among other things establishes new ADU laws. And essentially what it says is municipalities must allow ADUs in single family zoned areas by right, meaning no special permit required and you can't say no, essentially. The implementation date of that new law is February 2nd, 2025, so a little less than a month from now. There were additional regulations issued on July 8th, which turned out to be not very consequential, I would say. And a comment period was established on those regulations, which runs from December 20th to January 10th. So this Friday, 2 days from now. And Nahant does not, Nahant is allowed to create ADU specific zoning bylaws. ADUs are not currently addressed in Nahant zoning bylaws. And the new state law does not allow local zoning to make ADUs unduly onerous to implement. So, it's designed to not allow local authorities to deny ADUs by, making difficult rules like you need to have 2 acres of land if you want an ADU, things like that. As everyone may know, any zoning bylaw changes must be voted on at town meeting. In other words, it's not something that the Board of Selectmen or the Planning Board has the authority to do. Those must be voted on at town meeting. And as you'll see later on, the schedule for drafting any proposed ADU zoning regulations, that has to get reviewed by the Attorney General's office. Planning board will have a comment period. Then the finance advisory and finance committee needs some time to review it, and then it needs time at the printers to get out in advance of the town meeting. So that schedule, which we can look at in a few minutes, is very tight. And there's a number of steps. So that's my quick introduction to what this ADU topic is really all about and how it relates to Nahant. So with that, Shannon, thanks for
Okay,
the time.
great.
You can get into
Yeah.
the nitty gritty.
Yeah, that's a really good summation of that. So where we're at now in the process is that we have to get started crafting this relatively simple bylaw. I view it as a relatively simple lift because the state is controlling so much of what we can't regulate. And that's what the regulations are really focused on is all of the things that we cannot do. That being said, I wanted to get into a couple of the things that I've heard from some of my constituent friends and neighbors around the island, you know, that are opposed to the idea and who would like to get real strict with things. And I just wanted to clarify that, and mirror what Josh said, that we can't do that. We're allowed to control and regulate very little. For example,
See I got your document on the screen now.
okay, great. For example, we can't say we can't regulate occupancy restrictions. We can't regulate the total number of ADUs in town. We can't regulate the relationship of the ADU to the principal dwelling. We can't have anything to say about design standards. Dimensional standards have to be the same as what's allowed in single family zoning. So and I think that's one of the biggest things that folks might be interested in is what's the setback and what's the height. The setback and the height would be the exact same as what it is for a single family dwelling in Nahant, which is 20 feet on the rear, 10 feet on the side. The height would be 30, up to 35 with a special permit from the ZBA. We're not able to go over state regulations with things like utilities, safety, emergency access, environmental regulations. We can't demand more stringent site plan reviews, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of things that we cannot control. One of the things that they do allow us to control, though, is whether or not we want to allow short-term rentals. So there's any restrictions on prohibitions of short-term rentals that are not consistent there. So what they're saying in these draft regulations is basically that their mission with this law is to have long-term rentals. So they're saying that we can ban the short-term rentals. That's pretty much one of the only things that I found that we actually could regulate that would make sense to everyone. Now, going into what I drafted on the screen, the first section is the purpose of an intent. Second is the definitions, which we all need to add to, and meaning I mean the selectmen, Dan Script, Tony, planning board. We'll be adding to this document ZBA. I know that Jocelyn Campbell has reached out and shared some input, so we need to all be involved in this because of the short time frame of turnaround. Scrolling down past the definitions, which will expand, we get into the crux of the bylaw. And really, I drafted this with intention of putting administration, enforcement, and procedural requirements first, without the political mumbo jumbo. Most of the ADU laws that you will see out there in the world, they put number 6 as number 1. And I just did it in reverse. I feel like That's just the way that I decided to do it. Use and dimensional requirements. Below, I basically went through and kind of cited that everything that the protected use dwelling unit draft bylaws kind of focused us to concentrate on. One, the ADU shall be a complete separate housing unit containing both kitchen and bath. It could be in an attic, basement, it could be another structure outside of the main structure. Number two, no more than one accessory dwelling unit may be created per lot without first obtaining a special permit from the planning board. The draft regulations authorize that. Number three, the building inspector may issue a building permit authorizing the installation of a use of ADU with the lawful existence, within a lawful existing single-family dwelling, like I said, attic, basement, or in an existing detached building accessory to in the same lot as principal dwelling, subject to the following. And I go into a little bit of clarification there with that. We can control. Well, let me back up. We are allowed to have one parking space for an ADU. We can't say that that an ADU must have two parking spaces. And so I put in at least one off-street parking space in addition to that required of the principal single-family dwelling. We are allowed to bring up Title V, which is septic. I don't know anybody in town that has a septic system, but we're allowed to say it. So the number or letter C is about septic. Title V is septic, and it also talks about wastewater requirements combined or for the number of combined bedrooms, and all of that stuff is kind of already existing state law and building code. So I was just referencing that. D says an ADU is not intended for sale, separate from the sale of the principal dwelling. And one of the things I found down in the Cape, folks were worried about condos. Folks were worried that people would do a ADU and then condoize it, and then that would be its own entity and be sold. So I tracked some language with that and put that in for D. So basically, D says that you can't have a condo, right? E, and by the way, D isn't really referenced in the draft regulations. We'll see what happens after the comment period, but hopefully that'll stay the same. E says an ADU shall not be used for boarding or lodging, short-term rental, or other commercial use. Now that's something that we could take a stand on. What we need to decide with this as a community is what the language is. Should it be 30 days, 31 days? Should it be 6 months? There's a comment I've read recently questioning, could it be 6 months? Could it be 3 months? In certain areas of Massachusetts, there's winter rentals, like on the Cape and Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket, they do winter rentals. So we need to figure out a time frame that matches our zoning law about short-term rentals, and so that's that gives us a little work to do with that one. But that is something that we can control. F is setbacks, and basically the draft regulations, they say that we can't be more restrictive than any of our setbacks or any of the height requirement in a single family district. So that's F, is the setbacks are the same as single family dwellings. G, and the last one here is detached ADU shall not exceed 30 feet in height. And just for the public's knowledge, if anyone's been tracking this issue, when the law was first announced, the state said that we would be able to control the height. They figured out, I guess, in the last few months that they couldn't. So the draft regulations say that they can't be, we can't constrict the height for basically that has to be the same as a single family, whatever the single family height in Nahant is, which for us it's 30. That's a crash course into what I've written so far. I just wanted to let the public know that the planning board is on this. Town administrator's on this. Selectmen's on this. KP Law will be on this soon. I know that there was some frustration in town about the lack of movement on this issue. And I just wanted to let everyone know that we are working diligently on this. And if anyone has any comments or concerns, please reach out to the planning board. And I wanted to remind, and Tony, I'll give it back to you here. I wanted to remind the public that the comment period is a very important period of time here. If you feel so inclined, please go on to the mass.gov website on ADUs and find the section where you could submit a comment, and please do. If you're concerned about the draft regulations, or if you're concerned about where this law is heading, please submit comments before Friday. And thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a really excellent start. Appreciate the work.
As Shannon was just quickly, as Shannon was just speaking to, I will share this screen. Really simply, if you go to Google and you search ADUs, one of the first things that'll come up is mass.gov website. And then when you click on it, it'll bring you to this page. And if you, care to comment on the draft regulations, and have questions, or, want to recommend changes to those regulations, you do so by coming to this page and clicking on this link down below, the public comment form. Again, these are due January 10th, minute before midnight. So Friday is the deadline. You can fill out this form by putting in your contact information and checking off some of the boxes that you are, want to comment on, and filling in your comments here in the box. And if you type up your comments, you can also upload, a Word document or a PDF doc. I suggest a PDF, by uploading the document here. And this
So-
link is on our is on Nahant.org as well. Gene, were you saying something?
Yeah, it's just a thought. People have asked, how does this interact with some of the other housing issues, STRs and ADUs and affordable housing and MBTA? How do they work into each other? Or do they?
I think it's probably easiest for someone who is just like getting involved in the conversation now or recently, and is kind of new to it. You almost want to think of them individually, but there are elements that overlap. As Shannon mentioned, the state allows for us to prohibit ADUs to be used for short-term rentals. So there's a little overlap there. There's also some language in the regulations on the ADUs about the parking element that Shannon brought up, and how, they use their own definition of proximity to a bus station to determine whether or not you can require a parking spot. And there's some overlap there with the MBTA 3A multifamily zoning, because that too has a proximity element to bus stations, but they use a different definition. So specifically, technically, there are little elements in all of these things that overlap. Generally speaking, as we take on each of these items, we're kind of doing them, primarily individually, but there are some overlap elements. But ADUs, in the general sense, the intent of it is to create housing stock for long-term renting.
Does it impact the number of affordable units that we're required to to post at some point?
No,
Well, it's an interesting question. As far as your 40B requirement and the percentage of housing stock that you have and what your threshold is, I don't think unless anyone else on the planning board or the select board could speak up, I don't think we've received any like specific direction from EOHLC on how it could potentially impact that.
well, I know when the earlier studies, the answer on ADUs was that unless the entire property is deeded capital A affordable, you can't have an ADU that's deemed affordable housing if the main house is not deemed affordable. So it's all or nothing.
Yeah, Josh, I could back you up on that. I've heard the same thing. This is Shannon.
Michelle?
I think the other question
Yeah.
is, I think the other answer to this question is that will the number of ADUs that start coming into the town increase our requirement to meet the SHI? And
Yeah.
that's the piece that's unknown because we won't know. There's two things I think. One is of the approximately 1,600 properties in town, how many of them are eligible for one or more ADUs? And will that number impact our SHI? It's yet to be determined.
In other words, if you were to add an ADU to your property, would it add one more unit to the denominator of the formula of how many units are in town? And it's a percentage of that to meet your 40B requirement. We don't have a direct answer on that yet.
Correct. And will they consider changing the formula to exclude ADUs? Could be another component of it. We just don't know. And it's not clear at this point what direction they're going in.
Mm-hmm.
You would think they would have that answer to that particular function right now.
Yeah, and even the other element that Josh brought up and Shannon concurred with, even as recently as less than a month ago in a webinar where we were talking about the condoization option of regulating that, the state was a little, not direct about that element. So if we're assuming right now, and I believe based on Shannon's draft, our direction is that you wouldn't be able to condoize it. But if the state is unsure about whether or not we can regulate that and somehow allows that to be doable, then you would have two separate deeds. It becomes...
Yeah.
Then you could potentially deed one and not the other. So it's a confusing element that we haven't gotten clear direction from the state on.
Thank you.
While we're still like in this high level, do you think this would part of the conversation? Do you think it'd be a good time to show the timeline?
Sure.
I do.
Good idea.
All right.
Tony, while you pull that up, can I just add something to what you're saying?
Yeah.
My feeling about what you were just saying is that this might be the answer to many years of non-compliance with 40B from all sorts of different communities not being up to the numbers, and maybe there's just an effort out there to create housing stock from a different angle. And maybe that's what the legislatures are thinking. I don't know. Maybe I'm just offering that as an anecdote.
Right. Yeah, I guess to that point, it's, we are, right now, we're dealing with the administration and what the intent of their regulations are. And, that may or may not align with what the intent of the legislature was. So we're really, looking for the state to be more direct about, what the intent of these regulations and the statute is, and remaining consistent with that. And it is a little unsettling, to be honest, that it doesn't seem like they're completely all the way there with such a short amount of time ahead of us. And back to what Shannon was saying earlier, there are towns that had accessory dwelling units already allowed in their zoning. With this new law, they're going to have to amend their local zoning to comply with the new law. And in some ways, they have more work to do than us. And there are some towns that have already adopted those amended bylaws and submitted them to the Attorney General for review. Some of those have received responses from the Attorney General saying, where we stand today, the bylaw you voted on is legal and is compliant. However, regulations are going to be implemented in February when the new ADU law goes into effect. And some of these elements you may need to revisit. And then there are others that towns that have voted on ADU bylaw changes that the AG hasn't responded to yet. So
it seems as though what's happening here is the state is simply trying to provide more housing. And however they get there, they're going to be sure we get there.
yeah.
I think that's the common denominator. Absolutely.
So on your screen is the budget and warrant prep schedule. Highlighted in blue are the dates that are more specific to the ADU process, but I've tried to lay out kind of everything related to prep going to town meeting. And I working ourselves back from the date of town meeting, which is May 17th. May 10th is when the finance committee book is required to be delivered to all households, which means the posting requirement for the warrant is the 7 days prior to that, Saturday, May 3rd. But in order to meet the May 10th deadline, the finance committee has to send their book to the printer by Friday, April 18th. So that's important when talking about the ADU bylaw, because when you get into a zoning bylaw article, it triggers a planning board process, and the planning board will host public hearings on the proposed article, and then they have 21 days to issue a recommendation. And the ideal process would be that their recommendation is included in the finance committee book that gets delivered 7 days prior to town meeting, so that residents can read it conveniently prior to getting to town meeting. So working from that date backwards and speaking with the planning board on their schedule and how they would or when they would like to host their meetings. The planning board identified March 4th and possibly March 11th, because it may be a long hearing and they might want 2 dates. And then they have 21 days from the date of their hearing to issue that recommendation, which gets them to March 25th or April 1st. Now the regulations, I'm going to skip even further up. As we mentioned, the law goes into effect the 2nd, and the state hasn't committed to a date as to when their final regulations will be published, but they are hoping to have them published for that same date, but it's not definitive yet. So once it goes into effect, once those final regulations are published, we will want to have, or the planning board will be working to finalize the ADU article. So between now and then, as Shannon has already started, the drafting of that article, there may be final tweaks to make once the final regs get published. Once the planning board finalizes their article, they submit it to, there's a kind of a little wonky process where technically the planning board submits it to the selectmen, and the selectmen send it back to the planning board to initiate their public hearing process. And they have to post notice 14 and 7 days prior to the hearing. During that time, the Attorney General's office and EOHLC, the secretariat that is managing the regs, has offered the opportunity to review bylaws prior to going to town meeting. Now, with this such an aggressive schedule and so many municipalities on the same schedule, and many municipalities having town meetings before ours, I doubt we will get response from the AG's office on our final bylaw prior to publishing it for public consumption and for the planning board to initiate their public hearing process. Which means, should the Attorney General review our final article that we publish and identify issues with it that may need changes, those changes would have to be acted upon at town meeting on town floor. Hopefully, we get those comments before the planning board finalizes their recommendation. And in that case, they could potentially include that information in their final recommendation. So, residents can anticipate what that floor amendment might be if necessary. So Friday, in 2 days, our comments on the regulations are due, and then it's immediately right into the planning board working with council and the public on drafting the bylaw, and getting it probably 90% of the way there. Then once those final regulations get published, if there's any tweaks that need to be made, make them, submit it to the Board of Selectmen. Once that is submitted to the selectmen, there's no changing the language. The selectmen then send it back to the planning board so they can initiate their public hearing process, and the planning board submits it to the AG for review. Then the planning board will go through their public meetings and then finally issue a recommendation to the FinCom to include in the book, and then we're off to town meeting. But it's as you can see, February 3rd to February 17th, there's only about a week and a half to 2 weeks there to make those final tweaks to the bylaw based on the final regs. So a lot of work to do, now through then.
And Tony, it's Sheila. I just wanted to know, and the Board of Selectmen, would the planning board be able to get assistance for KP Law for a day or two? I'm looking at hopefully either January or 3 dates, January the 14th, 21st, or the 28th, just so long as we can, so we can make this schedule.
Yeah. Yep.
Because we need to get the, the actual bylaw to the selectmen. And I think is it before the 31st? So they can sign the warrant?
No, in this case, the selectmen, I believe, would accept an article after the 31st deadline.
All right. Knowing we're working on it.
Yeah, because to submit it by January 31st, and then the regs don't come, if the regs aren't out yet,
Mhm.
and then you have to make changes, you kind of got to start all over that process again. You'd have to withdraw it and then resubmit it. So you might as well, I think in this scenario, we'd have to, accept it after the fact.
Thank you. Okay.
But yes.
Work with you about KP Law then. Thank you.
Yeah, we just got to talk to KP Law and see who they have available and when. Obviously, they represent a lot of communities, and I'm sure they have a large amount of staff working on this for many communities. So we'll have to talk to them and see what their availability is. But yeah, they should be part of the process.
Thank you.
So it seems like February 17th is a key deadline where the planning board has composed the article as close to perfect as possible. So selectmen have had a chance to review it and send it back to the planning board. And as you mentioned, Sheila, KP Law will have already previewed it and made any legal adjustments as required. So this is the key period between now and February 17th, I'd say. And from there, it's there's no slack, but it's sort of known entity, I guess, into the schedule.
Right. And hopefully, if there is some changes that, they may be minor that could be edited on the town floor.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for putting the schedule together. I think it's very helpful for people to be able to see how this all has to work.
I assume the planning board, your public meetings will be on the community calendar. So for the public that might want to provide input on the creation of the draft bylaw, you'll want to keep an eye on the community calendar and the planning board meetings and attend those and provide those comments and feedback through that process.
Yes, and I'm working, with the town clerk because Form 7 needs to be completed. So when town meeting is over, there's that Form 7 for submission for the Attorney General to approve the bylaw. So I'm keeping the chart right by my side at all times. A little bit of tweaking here and there as we've started this process a couple of weeks ago, but it's still workable.
What's Form 7?
It is a Form 7 that is something that's required by the Attorney General's office when there are zoning bylaw changes. That's just the title of it, Form 7.
Thanks.
It's to confirm that you followed the procedure of a zoning article amendment laid out by the law. So when did your notices, when they were published in the newspaper, I think there's also, Shannon, you'll remember this from the last one where there's a element of notifying neighboring towns, planning boards. There's just some notice requirements and as far as procedure goes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Um,
there's a easy procedure to follow. It's pretty easy to follow. Um, it's nothing compared to like a notice of intent with the Conservation Commission. It's a little easier than that. Just a few letters. I think Revere, Lynn, obviously, Swampscott, possibly Marblehead might have a crossing marker. Gene, you would know a little bit more about those water boundaries than I probably, but or Sheila, you probably would know that too. But there's only about what 4 or 5 different abutting communities. We have to send them the same thing that we would send to the newspaper. That's it.
Only to the city of Lynn, but we have to send it to the planning, we send it to the Department of Housing and Community Development, but is that now the Housing of Livable Communities? Okay, so there's a
Yes.
couple of little things. So the Regional Planning Agency, so that's the Community, the Citizens Planning Training Corporation, and
Yeah.
American, I forget the other name.
Yeah.
But we have to send everyone all those notices and the copy of our bylaw.
Mhm.
Right, so Sheila, I just want to say, the Board of Selectmen is here to support the planning board and
Thank you.
happy to offer our opinions and suggestions and support in any form that's needed. I think you and I and Shannon and Tony met a week or so ago. I think we're substantially on the same page on how what we hope to see out of these ADU zoning regulations. So you guys are off to a great start. Appreciate the effort, and we're here
Thank you.
we're here to help any way we can.
Yeah, we're doing what we can get done quickly as possible too, making sure we stick to the schedule.
Thank you.
It will
So,
be a lot of volunteering. Motion to adjourn, Sheila.
well, we're just, sorry, Shannon,
sorry.
just before you do, just wanted to switch gears quickly to the comments
Comments, yes.
that are due
Oh,
Friday.
sure.
Friday.
Oh, yes.
So I think at this point, our original, or one of the ideas that we talked about was submitting joint comments from the planning board and the Board of Selectmen. But I think in order to do that, we should, vote on those comments before we submit them. And whereas the deadline's Friday and we don't have them finalized yet, in order to accomplish that, we'd have to post an emergency, meeting for Friday to take that vote. Alternatively, we can submit separate comments. And, tonight, each board should probably vote to authorize one person from each board to draft those comments.
I like that idea.
Because we won't.
That's an easy fix, right?
Yep.
Right. That fixes it.
Yep, I agree.
How do we do that? Do we just vote on that or?
Does each board need to vote and we'll select a person?
Yes.
Yeah, I think, just because if the planning board isn't gonna meet and the Board of Selectmen isn't gonna meet before Friday, right? You should vote tonight. For instance, the planning board should vote to authorize one of your members to draft, the comments and get them submitted by Friday and then work on them the next few days to finalize them. And then separately, Board of Selectmen can vote to authorize one of them or myself to write, to draft their comments and get them submitted by Friday. And then, I can connect with whoever, if it's me for the Board of Selectmen, whoever the planning board chooses, I can connect with them and make sure, if we want to double check that we're remaining consistent or something like that. But that's how I would suggest doing it, unless you want to schedule an emergency meeting for Friday.
I have
So,
one question. Hold on. I have one question, Tony. That is, only comments from each of the planning, say, the planning board comments only, or from the public, if they've sent it into the planning board, or just the public too, that might send it into the Board of Selectmen? Or should they only send, the public should just send and go to the form themselves and submit directly?
Well, they certainly can submit themselves, and it'd probably be a good idea to do that as well. If the Board of Selectmen want to include comments that have been submitted from the public, or if the planning board wants to do that in their version of their comments, you could do that too. But I think, Dan, if you want to weigh in, I mean, I just think that you have to take some sort of vote tonight that
Yeah.
you're all in agreement that one person is going to have the pen and be in charge of completing it and submitting it. Because
Right, absolutely, yeah. We should delegate that authority to one person. We've done it in the past. It's nothing new. And as far as stuff, comments from the public, they really should go to the website on their own. We're gonna have enough to deal with getting this letter done based on our own comments. So it really would benefit everyone for them to go right to the website, go right on or show up in person on Friday. It's at 10 o'clock, I want to say, right there on 10 o'clock. Yeah, it's gonna be a show, no doubt about it. 10 o'clock, 100 Cambridge Street in Boston, second floor.
you have to register
So-
for that. You have to register for that.
Dan, is it,
Okay.
Dan,
So, gentlemen, would it be easier than debating this? Madam Chairwoman, I move that you have the authority to write comments for the planning board and submit them on our behalf. Do I have a second?
So is there a second for Shannon's motion?
I
will
second.
second. Oh, Rob. This was Rebecca.
Okay, is that
Pick whoever
Rebecca
you want.
seconded? Is that Rebecca?
Rebecca or Rob? Pick
Okay.
No,
one.
I defer to Rebecca.
All right, so Shannon
you.
so moved, Rebecca seconded, so I'll take the roll call vote then. Rebecca Flacco,
Yes.
Casey Carey, Shannon Bianchi,
Yes.
Steve Viviano, Michelle Capano,
Yes.
right, Rob Steinberg,
Yes.
and Sheila Hamilton, yes. So we have a quorum. Okay. So everybody knows you have to send everything to me, please. And then I'll send a copy to everybody.
Thank
Thank-
you, Sheila.
Thank you.
Anything else, Tony?
No, if the selectmen authorize one of themselves or me, whoever it ends up being, will connect with Sheila too, just to, cross-reference those comments.
Awesome. That's great.
All right.
Good
So
deal.
is our meeting then ended with the Board of Selectmen?
So we covered the schedule, we covered what you have for a draft.
Yeah, we do need to move to adjourn.
Okay, so
I
we
second that.
will move to adjourn. So we'll have a roll call vote. So Rebecca Flacco.
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you. Casey Carey. I don't think she's here. Shannon Bianchi,
Yes.
Steve Viviano, who's not here. Michelle Capano,
Yes.
and Rob Steinberg.
Yes. Who made that motion on the adjournment and who seconded?
Shannon,
Shannon.
And who seconded?
wasn't
You
it?
did.
Who did? I did?
I thought
Yeah.
you did.
Okay, we'll say I did. Okay.
Thank you.
I probably did. Sorry.
Yeah.
Getting old.
And then, so we have a quorum, so we are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
gentlemen.
thank you
Have a
all.
great night.
Mr. Chairman, I
Right.
move the Board of Selectmen close the joint meeting with the planning board.
Um,
No, we don't, we have to,
yeah,
don't we have to make a motion on somebody to,
let's act on Rob's motion first and close the meeting, and then make another motion on the comments from the Board of Selectmen. So, I'll second Rob's motion. Any discussion on closing the joint meeting? Hearing and seeing none, roll call vote.
Gene Canty, aye.
Rob Tibble, aye.
Josh Antrim, aye. I move that the Board of Selectmen authorize the chair, Josh Antrim, to submit comments to the state on behalf of the Board of Selectmen.
Second,
Any discussion? Anyone else wanna take over?
I can't think of anyone more qualified.
All right. Okay, then roll call vote.
Gene Canty, aye.
Rob Tibble, aye.
Josh Antrim, aye. And I guess I forgot to mention during that lengthy discussion that if any of the public does want, as Tony said and Dan said, go ahead and put your comments in through the website, but also feel free to email any comments to me with Tony on copy. And I guess your comments can go to all three of us and Tony, and ideally get those by the end of the day tomorrow, and we'll endeavor to include those as well, if appropriate. That's it on that.
Chairman.
Okay, yeah.
I move the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the Nahant Police Department donation fund and accept a donation in the amount of $31,809.75.
Second,
Okay, discussion. I think I saw Chief Furlong on. I don't know if he had anything to add. Still here.
I am here. Sorry
Okay.
for the lack of camera. I double booked myself. I'm on Christmas present exchange night. So
Okay.
I first want to thank the anonymous donor for this obviously gracious gift. He is a military person. He knows his guns. And when he heard of recent malfunctions with not only my gun on two different ranges, there was another firearm. He instantly offered to purchase the department new sidearms. So for that, I'm very grateful to him. It is obviously an officer safety issue, but it's a public safety concern as well. God forbid we have to use it to save our own life or somebody else's life, and the gun malfunctions while in the performance of duty. That's just simply not good. The guns that we are going to go to, first, let me just say that I'm not a gun guy by any stretch. So in talking to my firearms guys, the sidearms should be cycled out every approximately 7 years. I've been in Nahant now as a reserve. I got sworn in as a reserve in 2005. So coming up on 20 years, it's probably been about 15 or maybe even 20 before there was a mass cycling of sidearms. So it's time, first and foremost. The guns that we want to go to, is there a question? Okay, sorry, I apologize for the acoustics and the background noise, but the guns that we want to go to, the military just went to, I believe the state police carry, other large departments such as Cambridge, Somerville, the Essex County Sheriff's Department, they're all carrying this. The way we want to equip these guns, according to one of my firearms guys, it's going to have optics on it, and I've seen it in person. It's basically cheating. So the bullet coming out of that gun, the grouping, I don't know if anyone is familiar with grouping, but it goes from probably about the size of the target down to close to a silver dollar. That's how accurate these guns are. So the accuracy of the gun is greatly going to increase the officer's shots should we ever have to shoot in person. This was going to be a capital project that I was going to ask for this coming FinCom season. So this person alleviated us for that. So again, I apologize for being out and about and not face to face with the camera. So if there's any questions, comments, sarcastic remarks, I'll take whatever.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot, Chief, for hanging on and explaining that. Does this donation cover all the cost of all the purchase of all the guns that you're needing?
Yes, it's going to cover all the full-time officers as well as all the reserve officers, which is something we haven't done in years past.
That's very kind offer
Yep.
from this anonymous donor.
It's a it's a specific amount that he offered to
Yeah.
donate. It just so happens we had quotes ready to go to FinCom with, so that's why it's that specific.
Yep, and hope you never have to use them aside from at the firing range.
Yeah.
But very, very kind of someone to do that for you.
Yes.
Any other discussion before we vote?
Not just oh no, thank you to the donor on this.
Yes, like we can't thank him enough.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
It certainly is.
Truly overwhelming.
Yep.
And I think you really hit a point for me, Chief, when you're talking about not only protecting the citizens, but helping to protect your officers also. There's nothing
Yeah,
more important
in
than
the
that.
town, to be honest, the liability of the what we have now, where that bullet's going to go, it greatly decreases as far as liability for the town, should we have to use it.
There's also a financial element to the sidearm that the police department's going to carries a lower caliber ammo that
Correct.
tends to be cheaper.
Yes.
As far as that annual, expense. So
yeah,
there's a financial benefit too. So thank you, Chief, and to your staff for, keeping this at the top of your list and, doing the work ahead of time in anticipation for the budget. And thank you to the anonymous donor for their contribution. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you for the support.
Thank you, Chief. Okay, roll call vote.
Gene Canty, aye.
Rob Thibault, aye.
Josh from aye. Next, we're going to vote to approve the sale of notes and sign associated paperwork. Is there anyone on the call under the age of 60 that would volunteer to read this motion?
Yep, that would be
just
me.
ruled me out.
That would be me. All right, it's a long one, so if you bear with me here. Okay, so I, the clerk of the Board of Selectmen of the town of Nahant, Massachusetts, certify that a meeting of the board held January 8th, 2025, of which meeting all members of the board were duly notified and at which a quorum was present, the following votes were unanimously passed, all of which appear upon the official record of the board in my custody. Voted to approve the sale of a $724,750.75. I'm sorry. Voted to approve the sale of a $724,750, 6.75% general obligation taxable bond anticipation notes, subject to federal Massachusetts income taxation, the notes of the town dated January 10th, 2025, and payable July 24th, 2025 to Oppenheimer and Co. Inc. at par and accrued interest plus a premium of $55. Further voted that in connection with the marketing and sale of the notes, the preparation and distribution of a notice of sale and preliminary official statement dated December 12th, 2024, and a final official statement dated December 19th, 2024, each in such form as may be approved by the town treasurer, be and hereby are ratified, confirmed, approved, and adopted. Further voted that the town treasurer and the board of selectmen be and hereby are authorized to execute and deliver a significant events disclosure undertaking in compliance with SEC Rule 15C2-12 in such form as may be approved by bond counsel to the town, which undertaking shall be incorporated by reference in the notes for the benefit of the holders of the notes from time to time. Further voted that we authorize and direct the town treasurer to establish continuing disclosure procedures in such forms as the town treasurer and bond council deem sufficient, or if such procedures are currently in place, to review and update said procedures in order to comply with relevant security laws. Further voted that any certificates or documents relating to the notes, collectively the documents, may be executed in several counterparts, each of which shall be regarded as an original and all of which shall constitute one and the same document. Delivery of an executed counterpart of a signature page to a document by electronic mail in a PDF file or by other electronic transmission shall be as effective as delivery of a manual executed counterpart signature page to such document. And electronic signatures on any of the documents shall be deemed original signatures for the purposes of the documents and all matters relating thereto having the same legal effect as original signatures. Further voted that each member of the Board of Selectmen, the town clerk, and the town treasurer be and hereby are authorized to take any and all such actions and execute and deliver such certificates, receipts, or other documents as may be determined by them or any of them to be necessary or convenient to carry into effect the provisions of the foregoing votes. I further certify that the votes were taken at a meeting open to the public, that no vote was taken by secret ballot, that a notice stating the place, date, time, and agenda for the meeting, which agenda included the adoption of the above votes, was filed with the town clerk, and a copy thereof posted in a manner conspicuously visible to the public at all hours in or on the municipal building, that the office of the town clerk is located, or if applicable, in accordance with an alternative method of notice prescribed or approved by the Attorney General as set forth in 940 CMR 29.03, Section 2B. At least 48 hours, not including Saturdays, Sundays, and legal holidays prior to the time of the meeting, and remain so posted at the time of the meeting, that no deliberations or decisions in connection with the sale of the notes were taken in executive session, all in accordance with General Law, Chapter 30A, Sections 18 through 25, as amended, dated January 8th, 2025.
So Tony, after all that, does this cover any and all borrowing?
Just if you can say so moved first and second, and then we'll jump into discussion.
Hey, Rob,
So
Rob,
moved.
could you say so move?
So
Since
moved.
It's the document,
Second,
Sorry, Gene, what
okay,
was
now, discussion. What was your question, Gene?
if this
Okay.
covers any and all borrowing.
No, this is specific to the Coast Guard housing borrowing. I have talking points written up here, but Allison Nieto, our finance director and accountant, is online as well. Allison?
Hi. I can start my video. Hold on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I did drop talking points, but I can just walk through it. So this borrowing is just specific to the borrowing for the Coast Guard housing. It's specific to the original 1.8 million that was borrowed years ago for the acquisition of the property, as well as the 1.3 million that was borrowed for the demolition. Due this Friday, the town has 3.1 million due in bands that are made up of those items. If you recall, the original 1.8 million that was borrowed, the town received special legislation from the state that the principal didn't have to be paid down for 10 years. So that's what we did. And that 10 years is coming due this Friday. We also had 2 town meeting authorizations that allowed us to borrow 1.3 million for the demolition of the properties and preparation of them for sale. So that's what makes up the outstanding bands that are coming due on this Friday. Between September and December of this past year, as everybody knows, the town sold 5 of the Coast Guard housing lots, which brought in total revenue of 2.4 million. And per municipal finance law, the town has to use those proceeds to pay down any outstanding debt that is outstanding and related to the properties. So we're using the revenue to pay down the original 1.86 million outstanding in principal that was used to originally acquire the land. And then we're also using 289,000 and 900. We're paying down that first authorization for the demolition of the properties. And then in addition, we're paying down 275,250 of the second authorization for the demolition. So what you're voting on tonight is the remaining amount of bans that we're reissuing to fund the rest of the demolition of the Coast Guard housing properties. So that total is $724,750. We're issuing those for 6 months. They'll come due July 24th, 2025. And at that point, we're hopeful that the town will have sold enough of the remaining Coast Guard housing properties to fully pay that down in July. So as of July, we won't have any outstanding debt related to the Coast Guard housing properties.
Outstanding. Thank you.
Thanks for that explanation. So the goal and expectation, hope is that we're borrowing this and it's just for 6 months and it'll be paid off in July from the sale of the remaining properties.
Correct.
Sounds good. Any discussion?
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Allison.
thanks a lot for
Welcome.
Great.
walking us through that. There's no discussion, roll call vote.
Gene Canty, aye.
Rob Tibble, aye.
Josh Antrim, aye. Okay, we have an event to approve, cultural council concert. You wanna
Mr.
make that
Chairman, I move the Board of Selectmen vote. I just want to make sure I've got the right one here. Document, yeah. Vote to approve the Cultural Council concert event on Sunday, April 13th, 2025, starting at 2 p.m. at the Nahant Town Hall.
Seconded.
Right, I have some cheat sheet notes here. This is a free concert sponsored by the Cultural Council and is open to the public. The event will be a 2-hour concert and dance featuring the group Smack Dabs, which is an exciting 6-piece ensemble that features 30s style swing and blues music. Sounds fun. What's the date? April 13th at 2 o'clock. All right, any discussion on this?
I think it sounds very interesting. I agree. I think it would be a lot of fun. I love the name.
Yeah. Yeah, so Nahant Cultural Council gets a certain amount of funds from the state to sponsor events like this or any cultural event really. They for a long time have putting on concerts in the Ellingwood Chapel and various other dance recitals and things like that. So thanks to the Cultural Council for getting this done. Okay, roll call vote.
Gene Canty, aye.
Rob Tibble, aye.
Josh Antrim, aye. Ongoing business. Do we have any ongoing business to talk about? I don't have any ongoing business to discuss. Do you, Gene or Rob?
No, I have none.
Nothing from me, Josh.
All right. Coast Guard housing sale. Tony, you want to give us an update there?
Yes. Tomorrow, Sharon, our legal counsel, and Lisa Scortis, our listing agent, and I are meeting to finalize some of the elements of the next RFP, which features one of the lots that did not sell in the previous offering, lot number 5, and the remaining vacant lots which is 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. Our goal is to submit notice to the central register tomorrow, that procurement will be going live on Wednesday next week. There's a 30-day notice requirement with this type of procurement. So I think Lisa's already I believe she's working on having that teed up already in MLS, that these properties are coming up for sale. And the 30 days from there puts us on a schedule of we're looking at 2 bid openings a week for 3 weeks in a row, starting February 18th, Tuesdays and Thursdays. So it'll be February 18th, February 20th, February 25th, February 27th, and then March 4th and March 6th. We'll be going in the order of lots is going to start with 10, and then 8, and then 6, and then 4, and then 2, and then 5. So very similar process to what we did previously for the second offering. And hopefully we meet our goal that we get that notice into the central register tomorrow, and then we have about a month to really push awareness through marketing with Lisa's help, that the properties are for sale and bid openings and bid dates are coming up at the end of February.
Pretty compressed schedule on the bid opening. We've talked about that. Makes sense, and our real estate experts support that or encourage that. So
yeah, we talked a lot about the order in which we offer them the bid openings, go in what order with the lots. We talked about the schedule for a long time and went back and forth on a couple different options. It's not just the bid opening, but it's also, you have to consider the timeline that is attached to each bid opening. So there's 24 to 48 hours after the bid opening to make an award. Then there's 7 days to get a purchase and sale contract signed. And then it's 30 days for closing. And as we just mentioned in the previous vote, our goal is to raise these funds in a timely fashion so we can pay off those loans before they come due in July. But it's also the real estate market, and that's where we get a lot of that information input from our listing agent as to how we want to target the market as to achieve success.
Are these open in MLS right now?
Yeah, so they were when we spoke last, which was late last week. There's always been a listing advertising the number of lots that are available for sale in a general sense. Those have been on there, and of course, Lisa has done an email blast and created a website that that has a lot of information on it as well, that she sent out to over 7,000 agents. Now that we have the second offering approaching, Lisa has the ability to put those lots up as coming soon status. And then once the RFP is live next week on Wednesday, they actually change to a for sale status with the bid date included in them. Lisa is looking at recent comps and working on finalizing what the minimum value or what the minimum bid price is going to be for those lots as well. So we got a call tomorrow to finalize some of those details. And we're right back at it starting next month.
Good, excellent.
I'm really glad we're taking a second look at the pricing, Tony. I think that's might be some room there for adjustment.
Right. Well, we basically established a market with the sales that we just completed.
Yep.
You know, those prior to that, there really wasn't many comps that were, you know, apple to apple comparison of conforming land for sale in Nahant. You know, the last, I think Hodges Woods was like the last one prior to that. So we had to look at outside communities to see what those types of comps are, but they're not perfectly relatable to the town of Nahant. Now we have 5 properties that are closed on that we can use as comps.
And we have an increasingly rare opportunity in the hunt.
Yep. So that's all I have for Coast Guard
All right,
housing.
thanks. Well, town administrator report is next, so keep rolling.
Short-term rental registration process. We, since our last meeting, we've launched our registration process on nahant.org. We are looking to go to an electronic permitting software called Cloud Permit. It's not ready to be launched yet. We're working with the developers on, you know, making it Nahant specific. But in the meantime, we wanted to give people the opportunity to start the process. So if you go to nahant.org, short-term rental registration is the last link under helpful links on the home screen. If you click there, you'll come to this page that provides an overview, some information about whether you're eligible for a local license, what you need in order to obtain a local license, some of the property requirements, and then the application process. And helpful links down the bottom bring you to the short-term rental rules and regulations that were promulgated by the Board of Selectmen, the rental fee schedule, and the general bylaw. If you click on the short-term rental application, it'll bring you to a downloadable form. You fill this document out, submit it to the building inspector's department, and then we will work with you to schedule the necessary inspections that are required by the regs. I will ask that you know, folks bear with us because it is our first time doing this. So I'm sure we'll run into some kinks here and there, but we'll work those out as we go. But we're looking forward to getting that process going off and get that off the ground.
Yeah, that looks great, Tony.
That's really good news, Tony. Thank you.
You're welcome. Town meeting budget and process. You know, just bringing up the timeline again. CPC grant applications are due Monday, January 27th. Citizen petitions, written summaries, and committee requests are due Friday, January 31st. And in February, our initial drafts of the warrant and budget will be provided to the Board of Selectmen. And final draft of those will go to the Finance Committee by February 19th. That gives them 8 weeks of lead time to review the budget, have their budget meetings with individual department staff, and develop their recommendations for their book that goes to the printer on Friday, April 18th. Town meeting is May 17th. I have a potential, I always just add the potential date too. I don't I don't see our, town meeting needing a day two. But just in case, it would be Monday, I'm sorry, the 20th, not the 29th. It would be the Monday following that Saturday, so I'll have to amend that. On budget, so we've received budget requests from all department heads. Allison and I are going through those budget requests. We've been having individual meetings with the department heads, starting last week, running through this week, going into next week. And we're, evaluating all of those and looking at what, the town has for, what our financial forecast looks like and what we can afford, going into next year. We have, this year is somewhat of a tight year. I think the way that I've really put it is it's kind of like a valley or bridge type year, where next year our budget looking forward, our financial forecast looking forward, that is, school debt that was approved for the school project about 10 years ago will come off of the books. That debt will be paid off next year. So that's a significant expense of debt that will no longer be part of the formula. Also, with the sale of these properties, should the new owners build on the properties, we'll see potential new growth in tax revenue. But we won't see the financial benefits really of the Coast Guard housing sales until the following fiscal year. So anything that we get in for revenues this year is going right towards debt. Any other revenues that we get from the sales will go to free cash and will be something for us to discuss next year. Same thing with new growth. We really can't add that into our revenue projections for the upcoming fiscal year. We won't realize that until the following year. So we have a tight budget this year, but our outlook moving forward is bright. If you look at what our Prop 2.5 tax levy increase, as well as local receipts, and we're estimating a 2% increase in state aid. The amount of funds that we're bringing in over last year for unrestricted revenues is $363,000, which is about in line with what we brought in last year. As far as free cash goes, over the last few years, we've enjoyed a large amount of free cash, probably a little bit over $1 million in the last couple fiscal years. This year, we have less free cash and at $866,000. That number, even though it's less than what we've enjoyed over the last couple of years, that's really where our free cash number should be. So it's healthy. It's less than what we had last year, but it is a healthy number.
If I could, Tony, what's the reason it's less?
Well, it was more. The reason it was more in the past couple of years was really because of those COVID years that we had and the ARPA funding that we had. So a lot of our operating expenses were offset by that funding source, which no longer exists.
No, you're right. Good, thank you.
You're welcome. So, as I explain every year, the $363,000 that we're bringing in as new unrestricted revenue, that bucket of money is the amount we have to use for increases in our operating expenses. And then the other bucket of money, the $866,000 of free cash, is what we have to use for one-time capital investments, paying down debt, investing in our reserves, our stabilization, OPEB, our other types of savings accounts like that. But this year, we're dealing with some significant increases in operating expenses that we really can't control, such as benefits, insurances, other contractual obligations, and the school budget. The school has an increase in the number of students that fall under special education, which triggers tuition and transportation. So the school budget in it of itself calls for most of the $363,000 that we have in additional funding to spend. So it leaves us very little amount of money to work with. And our job now is to work with the department heads and the other boards and committees to really sharpen our pencils to make sure that we can, offer the selectmen and town meeting a balanced budget. But it's going to be a tight year as far as increases to our operational expenses. On the positive side, as I mentioned with free cash, we've done a good job over the past 5 or 6 years investing in those reserve accounts aggressively. To the point of stabilization, we have it over $1 million at this point. So if needed, we can reduce, how much we contribute to those accounts compared to what we've done in the past, so that we can use that free cash to offset debt or other capital needs. But yeah, I'll have at our next Board of Selectmen meeting, I will present to you a little bit more of a refined outlook on what we're dealing with going into this budget season. It's still early. Some of the numbers like state aid, what our true costs on insurances are, some other contractual obligations, what those true numbers are, we won't get until February or March. So we have to go into the budget estimating and conservatively to make sure that we budget appropriately to, whatever those numbers ends up being, we have a budget that's balanced that can account for those numbers. So we'll know more as time goes on. And we certainly have our work cut out for us. And I should and I want to give a lot of credit to the department heads and the elected boards and committees that oversee certain departments who are involved in this budget making process. They've done a lot of work to look at their expenses from previous years, what their needs and future goals are in upcoming years, and understanding what the larger picture of the overall budget is, and working with us to make sure that we present a balanced budget to town meeting. So a lot of work to do, and we'll have more information for you at the next selectmen meeting.
Thanks, Tony.
Thanks, Tony.
You're welcome.
All right, if you're done, Tony, next up is citizen comment. So if you have a comment, raise your hand or unmute yourself, state your name and address, and make a comment. Yeah. There's Brendan. Would you like to go first, Brendan? Brendan, did you have a comment?
Oh, sorry. So I wasn't sure if I was on.
Oh, yeah.
Brendan Bronick, Homestead, 2 Summer Street. I had 2 questions. One had to deal with the ADUs. I unfortunately I didn't get in, listen to hear the first beginning of it, but I guess my general question was if the property is like has grandfathered zoning I guess violations because you know the house existed before the zoning laws. Does the ADU inherit whatever grandfathered status the property has so that the ADU can be located in a place that's in a I guess a place that's the law would the zoning law would normally not allow?
I think the answer is it's not yet determined, and that would have to be reflected in the ADU zoning bylaw that we put forth for town meeting. That chime in anyone if they don't agree with my assessment, but
No, Josh, I agree. So, Brendan, what you're saying is if it's a non-conforming lot, will an ADU inherit the non-conforming components of that property? The regulations haven't been specified for that yet.
Okay. All right. And then
I
my
can't
second,
imagine that would be. I
However,
can't imagine that.
if I'm sorry, Dan. However, Brendan, if you have comments relative to that, then you should submit them to the EOHLC for the public comment period.
okay. All right. I'll see about getting
Thank
that.
you. Sorry, Dan.
what's your second question?
My second question, I don't know if the police chief is still on, but I guess it was a general question about the firearms that were being provided. Are the firearms involved in any lawsuits about malfunctioning issues such as safeties not working or the trigger or the I guess firing twice when the trigger is pulled?
I'm having a little trouble hearing you, and I don't see the chief on any longer.
Yeah, I think the chief is off
Okay.
the meeting.
All right, then that's all I have. Thank you very much.
All right. Michelle, did you have something?
Yeah, I just I had a request for, if possible, for the next Board of Selectmen's meeting, if you could devote some time to talk about 3A and the recent ruling that came out of the AG versus Milton.
Yep, that's a good
And that would
suggestion.
give you all some time to prepare some comments, and I'd be happy to work with you on it. But I know it's an important topic that we've been tracking for well over a year and a half now.
Michelle, what was that ruling?
I don't know if I'm the right person to interpret it. I feel like it's split.
I sent over, KP Law sent us a little bit of an outline of what that ruling was, Gene. I forwarded to you.
Okay.
But I haven't had the opportunity to really digest it all either.
I guess we probably shouldn't get into too deeply, but in a nutshell, the Supreme Judicial Court ruled that the law is legal. It wasn't rolled out exactly right, but it's three things. A, it's legal. B, the Attorney General does have the authority to sue. And C, it wasn't rolled out exactly right, and so that needs to be corrected.
It was the regulations the regulations weren't rolled out correctly. The actual statute's fine, but it's the regulations that were the issue. And that decision just came out today, so we're just still getting comfortable with it. So,
Yeah,
but yeah, good suggestion, Michelle, to talk about the next meeting. What was that, Rob?
No, I was just going to mention that the comment that Dan just made, that was directed towards the EOHLC as far as the regulations not rolling out correctly.
Correct.
Okay, anyone else have a comment? Don't see any hands up or mics unmuted. Jeff Lewis.
Jeff Lewis, 6 Ellsworth Road, Nahant. Does a compliment count as a comment? I wanted to thank you for paying off the $1.8 million net debt on the Coast Guard houses and additional debt going toward the 1.3. So if you can get
Well, it's a big relief for all of us and I think the community at large. So appreciate you. Appreciate the comment, Jeff.
Thank you. Have a good night.
That's very kind of you, Jeff.
Anyone else? I do not see any other hands or unmuted mics.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded. Any discussion?
Hope to see you all at the Christmas tree bonfire Friday.
I'll be there.
I'm gonna miss it. Unfortunate, but I'll donate a tree. Okay, roll call vote.
Gene Canty, aye.
Rob Tibble, aye.
Josh Antrim, aye. Night, everyone. Thank you all.
Night, thank you.
Bye.
Night.